Having a happy and calm flock is a huge benefit to you as a chicken keeper. So today we're going to look at all the factors that go into making sure that your flock is happy, healthy, and calm all the time. And prevention of problems is much better than trying to fix them if problems have already arisen. So understanding how to keep your flock happy and healthy and calm will help you avoid the most common problems that arise when keeping chickens. The most important thing to keep in mind is about what are chickens? Where did they come from? If you keep in mind understanding the kind of animal that chickens are, you can use your human intellect to avoid problems before they can start. So chickens descended from jungle fowl. They are a domesticated bird that descended from an animal that liked to live in a jungle, sort of a bush forest cover situation. So they're not huge fans of big open spaces. And what I see people doing a lot of times is putting the chickens into a situation where it just doesn't work for them as a species. So we're going to go through lots of different ways that you can make sure that you're meeting the needs of your chickens as a species. First, I'm going to talk about the relationship that you have with your flock, because this is actually the fundamental building block of having a flock that works well for you as the keeper. Doesn't matter about all the other things if you don't have a good relationship with your chickens. Now what that means is you treat them with dignity and respect as chickens. And you do things like you chat with them, you greet them in the morning. They aren't gonna understand what you're saying, but they're gonna understand your intentions. So if I have to go out to check on my flock when it's dark at nighttime, I call out to them and say, hey guys, it's just me, I'm just coming to do whatever it is I'm coming to do, and then they settle down. So it's not just like a big dangerous rustling sound in the dark that they can't see and they don't understand. They hear my voice, they know it's me. And likewise, I chat with them as I'm out doing things, explaining what I'm doing, and that is just setting the intention that I am a benevolent provider for them. I am not dangerous, I'm there for their best interests. And they will understand your intention, if not what you're actually saying. This is super essential if you have a rooster in your flock. It's really important that your rooster sees you as an ally, that you are not a threat, because it is his job to look after his flock. And you want him to see you as someone who helps him do that job, not as someone who threatens his flock. And if you can build that relationship with your rooster, you're not going to have any aggression issues with your rooster in relation to you needing to do things, which are sometimes causes kerfuffles. But if he understands you're there to help, he's not going to come at you, which is very good when you have a rooster, because they can get threatened by your presence. The space that your chickens live in is very important in terms of how the flock can operate together. Now, you don't have to have a huge amount of space for your chickens, but you do need to be mindful that the smaller the space they have to live in is, the harder you have to work to keep them happy, and the more you're increasing your chances of aggression and general turmoil. So if you only have a small space to keep your chickens, keep your numbers low, get breeds that are smaller. Don't try and cram a bunch of chickens into a tiny space. But with that being said, you don't need a huge amount of space. You don't need to give them your entire backyard like I do, but the more space that they have, the happier and calmer they will be. The way you set your space up matters a lot. So if you have just a big open space where every chicken can see each other all the time and there's no breaks in line of sight, it's just an empty open space, you're going to have problems. And I see a lot of people using this sort of a setup. And there are some really easy ways that you can avoid the problems that come from having your chickens in this kind of space. Breaking a line of sight is super essential. And by that I mean, if a chicken's having an argument with another chicken, which they will do, if they can duck behind something, get on top of something, go behind a bush, go up on a chair, any of these things will just diffuse the situation. So setting your space up where there is lots of things in the space to break line of sight is really important. And also different levels in your space, so that you've got like perches out in your run. It could just be a chair and a board, just things that your chickens can get up on top of, helps them to stay calm and happy with each other. And you can even build in like an actual, like a half wall or something in your run that doesn't stop the chickens from moving from one side or to the other, but it does allow any issues to be resolved by the chicken that's getting picked on just ducking out of the way and hiding for a minute. And that simple thing in your space setup will really assist with your flock just being chill and able to resolve any of their issues calmly and without it escalating to the point of injury. Chickens absolutely hate feeling trapped in a space. So you'll find that when your chickens are out free ranging, they're going to be a lot more calm with you because they feel like they have control of the situation and they can leave when they feel like it. If you have an enclosed run and you enter the run, you can become a threat to the chickens. And having a run that breaks line of sight will help in that situation too, because if they feel like they can duck around the corner of something and get out of your way, out of your sight, it will help them to remain calm. But keeping in mind that they hate being trapped in a small space where they can't get out, make sure when you're entering the run, you are not a threat. You come in calmly, you talk calmly, you move calmly, and nothing about you illustrates that you're going to jump and pounce and grab them. And they will, over time, learn that it's not an issue. Chickens need to be able to express their natural behaviors. Thanks, guys. That's some natural behavior being expressed right now. So one of the things that chickens love to do is scratch. They are super motivated to scratch. If they were out in a free range situation or if they were still jungle fowl in the forest, they would be scratching all day long because that's how they find food. So you need to allow your chickens to have a surface to scratch, and ideally that their scratching actually gets them some reward. Now if they can come out to free range, that solves that problem, but if they need to stay in an enclosed run, scattering food about in the run can help them to feel like they're being rewarded for their scratching behaviors. So don't just feed them in the feeder space where there is no behavior they have to do to get the food. Find ways that they have to work a little bit for their food, because that's what they want to do most of the time that they are awake. They want to be scratching and looking for food. So how you can help them do that behavior will really help them to stay not bored and engaged and not bullying each other. Chickens love to have dust baths, and they often enjoy having dust baths as a communal activity. So having a place for them to do their dust bathing where 2, 3, 4 of them can fit can really help them just be happy and chill. Now, they don't absolutely have to be able to do it as a communal activity, but they absolutely need to be able to do it. So make sure that you have a space in your run or your free range area that they can make themselves a nice dust bath, that it stays dry, that there's enough room for them to roll around in there and stretch out and really flap their wings, because it's absolutely essential for them to be able to do that, both for their mental health and for their physical health. Chickens also love napping in the sunshine. This is one of their favorite things to do. They like to spend a couple of hours every day just hanging out, stretching out in the sunshine, and they love to do that with their buddies. So if at all possible, set your run up in an area where the sun will come through in the morning and they can chill and nap in the sunshine. And because they don't like to feel threatened out in the open, it's good if that napping area has some bushes behind it or some kind of pop-away enclosure that they can feel like if they needed to jump up and run or hide, they have somewhere to go that will make them feel safe and allow them to just enjoy their spa day chilling in the sun to a much higher level than if they just had an open space where they will remain on alert in that situation. You can provide your hens with potentially hours of entertainment every day by allowing them to express their natural nesting behavior. And this can be done as simply as having multiple nest boxes in multiple places and setting the nest boxes up in a way that they can move the bedding around and shape the nests. And you can check out my nest box video to see more about how to do that. But hens will spend a lot of time cruising around and checking out their options. They'll go from one nest box to another nest box. They'll hop into one. They'll see if it sort of feels right for them today. And then they'll hop out and try another one. They're going to come back to the nesting box that everyone's laying in, but they like to go through the process. And they can spend several hours doing this, and that's keeping them occupied, expressing their natural behavior. So if you only have one or two options for them in one place without some bedding in it that they can really form and shape, then you're really not letting them express their full behavior, and you're speeding that process up so they have more hours in the day to fill, potentially getting bored and picking on each other. Chickens like to hop up and down from different levels, so that can be as simple as having an old chair or an outdoor perch where they can just hop up and chill at a different level from the ground. It doesn't need to be very high, they don't need to be flying up into the trees in the middle of the day, but allowing them to jump up and down from different levels helps them to stay occupied, and it helps their muscles and bones to stay strong, so they're likely to avoid injuries when they're jumping up and down from their nighttime perches. And having multiple levels in your run also helps with easy resolution of dominance behaviors. And what I mean by that is you'll have some hens that like to make sure all the other hens know that they are actually the boss. And they will do things like prevent them from eating food or getting to the water dish. But having a perch means that they can easily come along. The lower pecking order bird might be up on the perch, and the dominant one comes along and makes her get off the perch. And then she feels like she has won the little battle she's set up for herself, and the other hen has just hopped off and gone away. And it's a completely non-aggressive a way for them to express their pecking order behavior, which they do need to do. They need to enforce it, they need to have some arguments about it. So if you can provide situations where they can have those arguments in a very low risk way, then that is really, really helpful to avoiding problems in your flock. Chickens are creatures of habit. They form habits and they will stick to their habits, and that can be both an advantage and a disadvantage. So in terms of using this behavior to your advantage, you want to set up a clear schedule so that your chickens know when to expect certain things to happen in the day. They know what time they're going to get fed, they know what time that their coop will shut for the night if you shut them in at night. But these habits and schedules for chickens are based on the day length. So as we move into the winter time, they go to bed earlier, they get up later. So you don't want it to be a clock time, really, so to speak. You want it to be based on the actual natural cycle of the seasons and the day. This is most important in terms of letting your chickens out of the coop in the morning. The best thing to do there is to let them out at sunrise when they're going to get up, and you can use an automatic coop door with a sensor timer or just adjust the time yourself manually to allow them out. And the reason for that being so important is if they're getting up in the summertime at like 5 a.m. and they're stuck in their small space in their coop, then they're going to be bored and they're going to start picking on each other, and that's where you're going to have your aggressive problems happening. If they can leave the coop the moment they wake up, then they're out on their run, that's all set up the way they need to be living their lives, then you're not going to have problems. So just really think about those habits and schedules. You want to have your space set up and have your schedule in mind and stick to it from the moment you get chickens, so they will stay on the schedule you want them to be on, because otherwise they will do their own thing, and once they're established in that habit, you probably can't change their mind. The example in my situation is that a lot of my chickens want to sleep in the trees and not the coop, and I'm not going to be able to change that at this point. And if I wanted to change that, I would have had to avoid that situation from happening in the first place. So think about what you want your chickens to do and set it up so they can successfully build habits doing the thing you want them to do and not the things you don't want them to do. The structure or the composition of your flock does matter, and by that I mean the number of chickens you have, their ages, how they're related to each other, how well they know each other. They will all play into how the flock dynamics work. So in my situation here, most of my birds are related to each other or have been raised in the flock if they've come from outside eggs. So they sort of have a whole like family generational thing going on. But even within that structure, certain chickens will want to hang out with other chickens more. And in my experience, chickens that are the same color prefer to hang out with each other. Chickens that are of a similar age will tend to hang out together. And chickens that have hatched together, so in the same clutch with the same hen that has raised them, they tend to share a bond that lasts pretty much their lifetime that I can see so far. And they will often be sort of like best friends, or they will hang out with each other. If one of them gets sick, the other one will come and hang out with them. And that's really the only like super close bond I've seen my flock have that's lasted over time. So that's the special little sibling bond, I guess, even if they're not genetically related to each other. But one thing to keep in mind is because of how they will like to divide themselves out into sort of subgroups and friend groups, is if you have a bunch of established chickens, all of the same age, you've gone and got them all at the same time, and then you want to introduce another group of younger chickens or different chickens, they are not going to want to combine into one cohesive flock. They're going to want to stay as sub-flocks. Now, you may be able to overcome that, but the easiest way to work with that is to just go with chicken behavior and provide a separate coop. Doesn't need to be a separate run space, but a separate coop for sleeping, and making sure that you have more than one water place, more than one food place, and then they will come together in the daytime and sort of separate out for food time and sleeping time. So you have a main flock and a sub-flock, and that just makes it easier than trying to force them to be together, which the older ones are not going to be happy about, and the younger ones are going to get picked on, or the new ones if they're not younger. So make sure that you keep an eye on the dynamics that are happening in your flock so that you know what chickens are friends with what other chickens, and you can be careful to use that information to your advantage in keeping things calm and happy in your flock. Feeding your flock a good quality diet will help them to be calm and healthy. So make sure that the basis of your flock's diet is meeting their nutritional needs and their protein requirements, and that is very important in terms of bad habits developing. If your chickens don't have enough protein, if they don't have enough variety in their diets, they can start behaviors like feather picking or egg eating. So making sure that they have everything that they need in their diet is very important. Now that can vary depending on their age and stage and things like that, and there are other videos I have that talk about food in more detail, but making sure they have access to a calcium source separate from their feed, so feeding them back their eggshells and making sure they have oyster shell grit or limestone, something like that at all times is important, and making sure that the food that you're giving them has an adequate level of protein, so that would be a minimum of 15% and ideally around 18% protein, and then that they have a variety, so they're getting some fresh food, they're getting some food scraps or something like that, just to keep things interesting for them and keeping them engaged with their food. So make sure that you've got that established for the health of your chickens, and you will avoid many health problems with a good, healthy diet in your flock. The last thing I'm going to talk about is how the seasons affect the behavior of your flock. So in the springtime, that tends to be a very chaotic time for your chickens. Hormones are raging, many eggs are being laid, and it's just generally an unsettled time. So that's not a great time to make any changes or introductions in your flock. And then on the flip side, wintertime tends to be a calm time where everyone's just sort of in a resting phase and hormones have tamped down and not a lot of eggs are being laid. So things are calm, and that can be a good time to make changes or introductions if that lines up for when you can get new chickens and things like that. And the autumn and the summer tend to just sort of be midway between those two extremes. So just keep in mind how the seasons affect the health and happiness of your flock, and use that to your advantage for either choosing to make changes or not make changes. always remember what your chicken is as a species and how you can make sure that all of their species needs are met, and you will be able to have a calm, happy, healthy flock and pretty much not have any problems that are caused by humans thinking they know better than what nature has set up in the first place. So respect the dignity of your chicken as a chicken. Give them what they need, and they will give you many years of healthy, happy companionship.